we might have some stragglers come on in. So maybe, do we need more lighting, Joe? Is that good?
We can see.
Okay, we can go? Easy?
As long as we don't lose the slide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's that?
How's that look, babe? On the live.
Bear with us all. We'll be going live here just in a few moments as soon as we get some technical things worked out. But we are here at the Columbus Botanical Depot, Ohio, with MedicateOH, Columbus Botanical Depot. This is Gabrielle Dion. I am the founder and publisher of MedicateOH. And we are a nonprofit that supports the industry with events, advocacy, and things like this, where we come together to talk about cannabis in a meaningful and thoughtful way. I'm joined today by Lee Roach. He's with Columbia Care, which is a dispensary here in Ohio, and Joe Brennan, who is the owner of Columbus Botanical Depot. So the first thing that we're going to do today is we are going to talk a little bit about the science behind cannabis as an exit drug. Cannabis has been used for thousands of years for thousands of reasons, and talking about and learning about cannabis. But more specifically and more recently, we have problems with certain pharmaceuticals, specifically opioids, methamphetamines, and street drugs like cocaine, as well as one of the biggest addictions that people struggle with here in modern society and probably throughout history as well, which is alcohol. So we're going to talk about the science behind using cannabis as a potential exit drug. You know, we talk about cannabis being a gateway drug. And you know, the DARE of the 80s and the Nancy Reagan era war on drugs taught us that cannabis is a gateway drug. A gateway to what, though? Right, harder substances supposedly. But our science has really determined that that's not true at all. And in fact is the opposite, that cannabis can potentially get folks off harder substances like the ones we've named. So Lee Roach is here today as also a Hawking College graduate in this very program, learning about cannabis as science. And he, along with Mary Alliger, our editor-in-chief at MedicateOH, created this presentation to help us understand both the scientific side of it and also the practical side of it. And then what we'll do is we'll shift into, after we go through this presentation, we'll shift into a discussion about our own experiences of using cannabis as an exit drug, and how we go about that and what that looks like for folks. So we are glad to have you join us here for this very honest and open presentation of something that you probably don't hear about all the time. So thank you for joining us, and I'll let Lee Roach go ahead and take it away. Thanks.
Hey everybody, what we're going to do right now is we're going to go through a little presentation just about the science and how it actually cannabis can aid in recovery or in your journey to recovery to even get started. So what we kind of talked about already is the whole gateway aspect of it. Cannabis has always been seen as a gateway drug, such as other things like nicotine, tobacco, alcohol. It's that first step that a lot of people see before you enter the hard world of drugs, which we know as cannabis users is highly inaccurate. Like, we know that they help you get away from things, they help with withdrawals, they help you just kind of ease through everyday life. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go on to the next slide. And so let's just talk about what actually addiction is. And we all know addiction can craving really ravage the body. You have your physical addictions, you have your mental addictions, and they both come coupled with hard drug use. Physical addictions, you're looking at anything from your body aches to your shakes to loss of appetite to gaining of appetite to all kinds of things. It could really mess up the wiring. So cannabis, of course, we know aids in these ailments such as the pain, the anxiety, the depression, like things that really ravage the body. Cannabis can help that recovery as well. So compulsive use is another thing that I feel leads me a lot with cannabis, is because I was a heavy user when I was using harder substances. So having the ability of something close to grab up when I have that compulsion and know that I can have that release is just something that helps me every day, knowing that, hey, it's readily available, it's here beside me. Not using it as a crutch, but using it as something that kind of makes life a little easier to deal with coming out of addiction. As we discussed, there is changes in the brain, of course, the way your mood affects, the way you handle life. Like you wake up in the morning on harder drugs and either you're looking for them and you're predetermined to find them, and that's all you care about, or you wake up grumpy because you don't have them. And that is everybody in that addiction, no matter if it's you're affecting the ones directly around you or it's some random person on the street, you're going to cause others to have a bad time. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. The impact of substance abuse issues. Of course, drug addiction is like a stone dropped into a pond. The ripple effects spread far and wide, impacting every part of a person's lives and the lives around those. Like I said, it doesn't just impact you. We all get in this negative mindset of, well, I'm not hurting anybody else. And it's a really deep emotion that I've discussed a lot lately of we have that mindset. No matter what you do, it's not going to hurt anybody. It's only harming me. I don't harm you. You're harming everybody. There's people that care. There's people you deal with. Like I said, the stranger on the street that you get angry at, that you snap at. That's because you're going through it yourself. You're harming yourself, yes, but there's other implications always around you when it comes to addiction. So let's go ahead and move on. The traditional treatment options, of course, for substance abuse disorder. This is something that I've always been really big on since I started my research into cannabis, of how Ohio is one of the leading states with the numerous opioid deaths and amphetamine-caused deaths, and we really don't have anything other than like, let's lock them up, let's throw them in rehab, let's put them on Suboxone. We've never really explored outside of those treatment options, which we see very few positive results. There are people who have been put on Suboxone in lieu of heroin addiction who are still on it today when this drug was invented 15 to 20 years ago. Their bodies have formed a complete dependency on it to where now they're stuck on this drug versus another. It seems like cannabis needs to be explored more in our state, primarily because of the situation that we're in as Ohio. It's like there's very little, just like Kentucky and West Virginia, surrounding areas. There's such a drug culture and a heavy drug use problem that why can't we reach out? Why can't we go, okay, this is less likely to harm somebody. Let's start implementing that. So, of course, the medication system, when I'm talking about like the Suboxones, of course, it's all FDA approved. It's combined with counseling and therapy to complete and to treat substance use disorders. The goal is not just to substitute one drug for another, which sadly, that's what happens, is you're stuck on one instead of the other. We can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So harm reduction, we all know that does help. And our state has definitely been implementing that more and more constantly with the naloxone, what is it?
Naloxone, yes.
What's the other free
term? Narcan.
Narcan,
Yeah.
With the ease of Narcan and how easy accessible it is. And there are definitely free classes constantly on how to use Narcan on a patient. Yeah. We've also done safe consumption sites. I don't know primarily if Ohio has really got behind that too much, but other bigger states have definitely promoted sites that are safe consumption where they have free use of access needles and things like that. And they actually have disposable places where you can throw away instead of like, I have even been cleaning up outside certain locations here in Ohio, and I've noticed dirty needles, and that could be something that
there's a problem in certain city parks and things like that.
It really is.
It
definitely does, and I mean that results back to safe consumption sites, not necessarily providing a hey come here and use, but even a little disposal unit or something in more places.
Exactly.
The drug testing and the drug checking now has been very great in Ohio. Places like Dance Safe, they go to festivals and they offer drug testing for individuals who are wanting to use drugs. What they provide is they take a small sample of your product, they test it, they give you results to let you know that, hey, this isn't fentanyl, this is whatever substance you were looking for. Which help in a community, but we don't want to keep that stigma.
Yeah.
So we can move on to the next slide. So now we're going to start cannabis and substance abuse. Next one. So there is cannabis use disorder. We hear it as, the hypersensitivity to THC, the issues where people have to take hot showers and get nauseous, which it is a thing. There is a cannabis addiction, and it's a mental, moderate, or severe based on how many symptoms a person has. Withdrawal is real, which, like I said, cannabis is a mentally addictive drug. You do sometimes have that grumpiness or that unwillingness to do a task because, hey man, I just used my last dose a little bit ago.
Yeah.
Like, you have that.
Yeah.
So not all users will develop, but of course, many people can use cannabis without developing disorder. However, the risk increases with frequency of use, especially everyday use, and higher potency products, unfortunately, like concentrates, dabs, things like that. It is treated, but treatment involves therapies like cognitive behavior therapy and motivational interviewing to help change behaviors and throughout patterns. Another thing that I always suggest is tolerance breaks. I know we all hate the T word, but when you're coming down to an issue like that, especially if you're already using cannabis in lieu of a harder addiction, always take a tolerance break because that can always lead back into old patterns as well. Next slide. So what is a gateway theory? Well, like Gabby discussed and like I discussed, gateway is basically just saying, hey, if you do this, it's going to lead to further and worse decisions down the line, which we all know it can, but not with cannabis. I don't see cannabis as being that thing. I've never smoked a joint per se and then wanted to go do a line of cocaine. I've never had that urge to back it up. The most I think I've ever had is, hey, I want to go for a hike. It's been a gateway to healthy behaviors instead of unhealthy behaviors. Social access, using softer drugs does put a person in social circles where harder drugs are available and their uses are blunt. So that can be part of the gateway too, because 9 times out of 10, I think it was more prominent in the 90s and 2000s where you rolled up to that one guy's house and if he had weed, 9 times out of 10 he had something else. That was big back then. But I think nowadays that's starting
There's no one standing out the side of the dispensary going, if you like weed, you must love this coke.
Right.
That doesn't exist anymore because people are buying weed differently than they ever have been.
Exactly. You see people from all walks of life coming into this business now. It's not just the partiers.
And because you're seeing weed that's been tested and cleaned and everything, you're not seeing things like the stories we heard over youth of someone going to smoke weed one time and it being laced with crack or whatever, was the case, which, you can still have cross-contamination.
Well, of course.
It still happens. But if you're going to a legitimate dispensary, isn't likely. So most people are buying their weed differently.
Right.
So you don't see that as much, that kind of gateway.
Yeah, that definitely helps kind of erase some of the stigma I think, too, on that aspect. We go ahead and go to the next slide. So modern views on gateway theory. Of course, we all know, mainly in the science side, the phrase causation or correlation is not causation. Basically, that means just because something correlates, say the numbers of one thing rise, so does another thing, that doesn't mean there is any relation involved. That's causation does not cause correlation. The gateway is not inevitable. The vast majority of people who use alcohol or cannabis never go to harder drugs, and like we were just discussing, I think that's even more so now than maybe back in the day because there's less access of, hey, you can get all in one stuff. Hey, you're using cannabis, you should try this.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's actually kind of dwindling a little bit.
I think so too.
The ignorance environment. The theory underlies the huge role of poverty, mental illness, lack of opportunity, and childhood trauma, which are major drivers of serious addiction. Yeah. Like I said, when it comes to addiction, the first thing that needs to be addressed is underlying causes. Yeah. There's always a use. There's always a reason people are seeking that escape from whatever they're dealing with.
Yeah. People have a hole, basically, that are
What's happening?
Getting a little static here. Just bear with us. Okay. All right. There we go. Okay. This one works.
That was weird.
That was weird. Okay. All right. Moving on. Just moving on with the point of the gateway drug being trauma. Really, the real gateway that we see is especially childhood trauma, and that can be mental, emotional trauma that led to you beginning to try to fill that trauma that was therapy with things that make you feel more warm and fuzzy inside, and that is what leads to pretty much all drug abuse, that you're trying to fill a hole That hole can be, continue to be filled with things like opioids, especially when folks try to get off those and get on things like Suboxone. It's still filling that same hole. The thing about cannabis is it's a different vibrational level, and it allows you to get out of that hole that those lower vibrational drugs put you in, and allows you to escape out of it. That's not the scientific method, but now that we're back in it here with our mics on, we'll go back into more of the science behind it.
I just want to add to something to follow that up.
Yeah.
It's a very controversial thought that I've had for years of how, if anything, in my opinion, could be a gateway. It's a lot of the pharmaceutical industries is because my issue is, of course, like I said, I used drugs primarily because it helped my mental state. It helped me function the way I wanted to function. And when I was a child, of course, I grew up in the 90s, so it was a lot of, your child has ADHD, let's try this, let's try this. And I was on Adderall, I was on Ritalin, and I was tried on a drug called Strattera.
Yeah.
That was later discontinued because they realized it was causing suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
So, when I'm on amphetamines growing up my whole life and I get out there and I finally try meth, it's like my brain functions. This is what it should be like. Everything's working properly.
Yeah.
So my controversial opinion is, if anything should be blamed for a gateway into harder drugs, it's definitely our pharmaceutical industry. Because even with children, when you get a cough, you get what they can lean is what they consider it now.
Yeah.
And that's literally codeine syrup.
Yes.
And you're giving it to kids.
Lean is the street drug of codeine syrup, basically.
Yeah. So you're
and it's
giving
given
children
to,
this. So next thing you know, when they're a young teenager or even earlier, in some
You're lighting
cases,
up
they try it.
their opioid receptors.
Bingo. They're like, oh, I felt this before. I like this feeling. Here it is.
Yeah.
So in a sense, like, cannabis is the way out of that. Because cannabis has always fought the pharmaceutical industry. It's always been kind of the niche cousin.
And I was thinking on the way up here that I first had an opioid when I broke my collarbone when I was 5 years old,
and
then 11 when I had a sprained wrist, and then I developed problems the more I went into the pharmaceutical industry and found more reasons to find opioids. And did my drug seeking behavior come from being prescribed those things as a kid? It's a wonder. And it's, when kids get injured today, should it be a more important discussion that parents use? Like, hey, could this lead to my kid getting addicted growing up?
And when that leads back to, cannabis use for younger adults and
Exactly.
kids, like, should that be something that's looked into for emergency use? If a child breaks his leg or something, instead of an opiate, should they just send them some more SO or a topical?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So cannabis exit drug was what we'll be discussing. Not a one size fits all. Not everyone is a good candidate for cannabis as an exit drug. There are people who cannot use cannabis without slipping back into other behaviors. Like I said, cannabis world does fall into, cannabis culture does fall into a lot of partying and a lot of festivals, which in those means does revolve around a lot of other substances that can put you in an environment. So shifting to cannabis use primarily to avoid addiction, it's not always for everyone. Like it just says, not all one size fits all. You need to be very well and know yourself enough to whether this option is good for you. It's not recommended by most health professionals to use cannabis at all when trying to maintain sobriety. However, the efficiency of cannabis as an extra drug has been shown throughout countless anecdotal evidence spanning decades.
Yeah, I would add to that for myself, cannabis was not even discussed as a potential, I had to find it, I had to seek it out on my own, as most people do, and even the VA specifically does not talk to its veterans or active duty military about and its potential for helping with PTSD, which is huge, right?
Recently, I can't say that I've spoke to a few veterans who the VA is actually starting to look into cannabis and psilocybin therapy along with PTSD.
That's such a great development for sure.
Next slide. There we go. Beautiful. So this is one thing I discuss a lot about is how cannabis can offset opioid withdrawal symptoms. And a lot of us have been down that road, and we know how hard, I hate to say it in slow slang terms, but being dope sick can feel when you're coming out of
It's an
opiates.
awful feeling. I always describe it as I would never want my worst enemy to go through.
It's the worst flu.
Yeah, it's days long, it's shivering, shaking, not to be too graphic, but diarrhea, and it's a real illness.
Diarrhea.
Yeah, and you can't eat, and it's a very, very uncomfortable experience that one will do pretty much anything to avoid, including going out and buying more drugs to avoid the experience, because it is that unpleasant.
Exactly. So of course we know, like we discussed, the nausea, the vomiting, the diarrhea, the body aches, the pain, the anxiety, the appetite, all of that can be treated with cannabis. Like those are all elements that where cannabis has been prescribed for since day one. I mean, you're talking chronic pain, you're talking your PTSD, your anxiety, your appetite loss, the body aches and pains. Those are primary reasons cannabis has been prescribed. So to say that there's no research being done is kind of disheartening, that we have the evidence in front of our faces that it cures these ailments. So why not go ahead and do it?
Yeah, which, when folks go into these drug treatment centers, they're expected to go off all substances, which is not doable for most people. It's not comfortable. It's not something that you want to repeat. So if you go back out, which most people do, and reoffend and get back on it and get hooked again, then you're going to do whatever you can not to go back into another treatment facility like that. But, if folks could integrate cannabis as a therapy, then a lot of that uncomfortable first stages of the withdrawal from opioids specifically, but also for many other drugs that also have similar withdrawal, including alcohol. Cannabis could be very helpful and could, be basically the cure. Yeah, the key for you.
And see, I see
It was for me, for sure.
It's another controversial statement, but that's what I do. Is if you're an addict, you have that innate sense of, I like a little bit of buzz or something going on. And it's like, why is it so bad for people to reach out to that in that environment as well, coming out of addiction, knowing that they still have that urge to that escape, no matter what it is? Cannabis is there. Like I said, I use it for that reason myself. Like when I have the urge to use, I'll hit my vape. I'll go out and I'll do a dab, and that keeps me from ever even thinking about needing anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can move on to the next slide. So, like Abby was saying, alcohol symptoms and withdrawal, of course, is one big thing it can help with as well, because the anxiety, the shakes, the sleeplessness, and the nausea primarily. Sleeplessness is a big one. I know for alcoholics who develop insomnia ever so slightly after so many years, it's almost like you have to have that drink every night to unwind, to shut your brain down, and to relax.
My parents, they both drank to go to sleep almost every night for years and years and years. It was a generation. Our parents' generation, the boomer generation, really did rely on that because they didn't have anything like cannabis and other reliable methods. And
sleep beds, those things are just as bad as anything else.
Yeah, and then go to the doctor, and the doctor would say, "Oh, one drink a night is fine," but it never is one drink, right? It's 3 or 4, and cannabis, is so many people have noticed that cannabis is a very nice replacement for the feeling of alcohol.
Exactly.
It's very similar. You got but without any of the drawback.
Exactly.
I always say it. When you stop drinking alcohol and start using cannabis, you notice the cognitive dissonance that folks have to get to in order to get to that emotional state of, this is the right thing to do to poison my body and to have the result of feeling terrible tomorrow. Or I could feel the same general way and not have that tomorrow.
Right,
It's
right.
like so obvious,
That's why I
right?
love the
Yeah.
implementation of like the cannabis infused drinks. Because
Yeah.
especially for heavy drinkers,
Yeah.
man, it's so nice to have that can, to have
Yeah.
that feel, the tall boy. Like
Yeah.
there's definitely a sensory effect to being an alcoholic as well.
Absolutely.
Where, like having that can, man, and knowing
Yeah.
that that's what's helping you relax is great. Eh?
Yeah, 3 years, sober for me from alcohol, and I really use those hemp beverages a lot that Joe has over here at the Columbus Botanical Depot, and that are available at bars throughout Cincinnati and where I live and throughout Ohio. For the time being, we'll see, but they are really a nice replacement. And maybe we could get to a point where we have actual THC, low alcohol or low THC beverages that come from our dispensary or our cultivators here in bars and things, because that would be the ultimate, that you could have people really actively switching from choosing in the bar the way I did 3 years ago. Is I just went to a popular bar, and I think they serve THC drinks there, and I used to drink an oatmeal stout every time I go there, one or two sometimes, and I just simply made the switch of switching to THC beverages, and boy, what a difference it has made, because I realize now that alcohol was a driver of a lot of other parts of my addictive behaviors.
Yeah.
And the other things that I was addicted to, it made it a lot easier to resist those things when they came up, when also took alcohol out of the equation. And cannabis really helped that.
Creation, choice happening. There's
Yeah.
a reason why casinos sell alcohol.
That's exactly right. That's
Yep.
exactly right.
Move on to the next slide. So the stimulant withdrawal symptoms, which I could definitely relate a lot to this, the crash, the depression, lethargia, the appetite, the sleepless disturbances, come out of high dose amphetamines is a very different world, where yes, you don't have the exact withdrawal symptoms as an opiate. It's not as body achy. You have way more mental disturbances, your sleep patterns, because you could have been up for weeks on end, days on end. So your body doesn't quite know how to adjust back. Your appetite is shot because you probably haven't eaten for a while. And there is the lethargy. There's literally a sense of, I don't want to move. I don't want to exist today. I just want to lay in bed. I want to run away for the next 3 days. And that's what I dealt with a lot when I was first getting through those phases, was the lack of motivation, the lack of self-confidence, the lack of to try anything was a huge struggle. But then I found other things like herbal remedies and cannabis that's kind of given me, I hate to say, that spark back in life, to where it's like, hey man, you can go out and do something cool today.
Yeah.
You don't need to sit at home and get high on this shit.
Yeah.
Just go out and smoke a joint in nature.
Yeah.
It's a lot better that way.
Not to mention stimulants kill your appetite, which some people are looking for.
Yeah.
But when you get that appetite back through something like cannabis, and you start to make healthy choices in your diet, and you start to feel the changes in your gut, and it changes your experience of life, of being a more happy and it really can. Your gut has all the answers, and when you're killing it with stimulants, and to try to be skinny, which we all want, right? We want to be skinny, look like the cover model, right?
THCV, that's
Yeah.
another thing.
So,
That's always
that's interesting that you bring that up too, because it is a great switch for people who maybe have taken that munchies a little too far, which I have for sure time and time again, and will probably continue to do throughout my life, but that's me. But the THCV is a great way to implement that as a minor cannabinoid in THC that is expressed more so in certain plants, and you can go to dispensaries at places like Columbus Botanical Depot and get THC heavy strains and products that can help you not only keep move you into some of the addiction, move yourself out of addiction of other things, but also help you not to have those munchies that a lot of folks get scared to try cannabis because of. Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, you're like, I'm looking good, I'm looking flat.
And see, that's
Yeah.
another thing. Well, I put on like a lot of
Yeah.
THCVs because it can act as a
It sure
stimulant in
can,
certain
yeah.
doses, and like it's one of those
Yeah.
that it helps my brain function at a rate that I feel comfortable with. Like it
Yeah.
actually helps my thoughts come out a little easier when I have high doses of THCV
Yeah.
in lieu of shit ton of caffeine, which I
Yeah.
have a big problem with too. It seems like
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's probably better than
Yeah.
other things.
A lot of other folks, they say cannabis makes them sleepy. And when I worked at the dispensary, I always told them, have you ever thought about trying a cup of coffee in the
Exactly.
morning too with it? It's like, they're actually a really good combo.
Going to the next slide.
Yeah.
All right, the psychological bridge of cannabis. Ritualistic replacement. The act of smoking or vaping cannabis will replace the religious behavior of using another drug. Like I said at the beginning, that's one predominant reason why I use cannabis a lot. It's just that having that escape right here, right ready to know that I'm having a rough day, if I have a little bit of anxiety, I can make it go away in a little bit no time. Breaking the compulsive cycle. This is exactly what Mary Elliger's smokable first rule does. It creates a mandatory pause, a moment of reflection. By that time the cannabis takes effect, the sharp compulsive urge for the harder drug often passes or diminishes. Catch off the craving, making it easier to resist. Which we all know they can. Cravings
Yeah.
can be curbed by other things. Like I know people who've quit cigarettes by chewing gum or
Yeah.
quit cigarettes by drinking a pop. You know,
Yeah.
you just it replaced that timing and that behavior with something else.
Yes, traditional drug recovery centers as well as like AA centers are huge on like coffee and cigarettes, right?
Any AA meeting, you know there's a coffee
Right.
pot there somewhere.
Yeah.
So reducing anxiety about sobriety. Sobriety can be terrifying. Cannabis provides a middle ground. It allows the users to not be sober, but also not high on destructive drugs. This made the idea of quitting other substances less frightening and way more achievable for other people. We can move on to the next slide. Next one. All right, this is Mary's story. So from age 5, she was fascinated by adult vices that she saw on TV and at home, like a lot of us were. We all kind of saw that one character in the one movie, either smoking or drinking. We were all like, hey, that's a cool guy, you know. We all have that urge eventually. So, of course, we can relate there. She associated smoking and drinking with being grown up, which that happens a lot. I've noticed in my personal life, I did the same thing. That was what all the grown ups you saw doing was sitting out in the garage with a beer or cigarette in their hand or going around the shed with their friends and smoking a doobie. It was what older people did. So, of course, we all want to age older and quicker. So that's what leads to that quite quickly. First tips and taste of alcohol came from her own parents, contributing to her curiosity. A traumatic childhood and household with readily available unmonitored prescription pills created a perfect storm. At age 12, she started stealing her mother's unused painkillers, the Vicodin and Percocet. She experimented with mixing them with anything she could find that altered her mindset, which again is that escape that we all look for, that escape from reality when we're all going through something. It's one of the main causes I feel is addiction. By junior high, her identity was the pill popper. She publicly known and was even mocked for it. By the end of freshman year, she was a daily pot smoker, and eventually she was introduced to another world of substances such as LSD, mushrooms, ecstasy, inhalants, and opium. At 18, she tried cocaine, and it became an immediate, all-consuming nightly habit. The consequences mounted. She lost her job, she stole from loved ones, and was willing to trade anything for the next high. She hit her moment of clarity watching her friends' lives implode, getting evicted, arrested, and graduating to crack. And this was the story of the person who helped build this lecture today, and who was actually, like we discussed earlier, she has a master's degree in cannabis now. She was a professor for a while for cannabis and gave me my degree. She definitely came a long way.
Yes, thank you, Mary, for sharing.
Thanks, Mary, if you're out there watching.
Yes.
Next one, Megan. Already there. Oh.
Okay.
She was faced with a long list of substances. She made a strategic choice. She saw what she saw was the safest option, of course, which is cannabis, we've discussed. She needed to get clean by getting as high as possible and only on pot for 2 weeks, which, I mean, that's kind of like your own personal rehabilitation program in my mind. Like she had her own regimen, and she stuck to it. She isolated herself, and those 2 weeks were a blur, but they were definitely a crucial detox. She made a promise to herself before re-entering the world. If I want to use a drug, I must smoke them first. If I still want it, then I can. Which is, she said that forever. I've heard her talk about that for a while, and it is stuff, man. That is a really good thought process. Somehow the simple rule worked. It broke the cycle of compulsion. With one small exception, the rule has kept her clean and ever since. She's a daily cannabis user and maintains and her medicine. For me, it factors creativity, patience, and makes a better parent. Her story isn't about traditional sobriety, but finding a sustainable path from self-destruction. This year, she has been celebrating 17 years of green and clean. Her final thought is she is a living proof that there are many ways to be clean, and for some of it, that life is lived green and clean. That's it. So, of course, thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for being on the live and watching. We're going to go into kind of an open discussion topic at this point. Of course, sobriety is not all one size. Everything's different. Everybody finds your own path to sobriety. Cannabis is just one way to do so.
Yeah, I want to touch on something that Mary Gallagher story touched on, which is that she had to find her own path to getting out of harder drugs. I was on a similar path. I was addicted to opiates through years and years of having them in medical interventions, and then finding myself years and years of having them in medical interventions, and then finding myself going into drug-seeking behavior, and then having another injury that caused me to have a couple of back surgeries and really fall deeply into a 20 Vicodin a day habit. I was in Las Vegas at the time, far removed from my family and friends here in Ohio, and it quickly spun out of control. I was lucky to have an intervention at a dispensary. I was getting my pain medicine, and the surgeon that was working on me, I have degenerative disc disease where I have I've had two surgeries, and I've got rods and screws in my back, as well as one in my foot. And the doctor that was going to be working on me as the surgeon recommended that I get a medical card, which was right in 2016, and in Las Vegas it had just become available, and so just in the nick of time, it saved my life. And for me, though, and like Mary, we both had to go on our own path, and we had to find our own way out of it through our own ingenuity, which we shouldn't have to, I think, do.
Yeah.
You should be able to go to a treatment center and get treatment and get cannabis as part of that treatment.
When I was a teenager, I had addiction problems too, and I was put in some of those treatment centers. I was with what was called Bassett House down in Athens County, and it wasn't a lockdown rehabilitation center, which was great, but it was one of those, if you left, there was going to be repercussions, which I can honestly say the way they handled that, it was probably the best treatment center I've ever seen in Ohio. I was there for 92 days, and I still remember things from I fell back into addiction. Now that I'm in this clean, I still recall things that I learned back then. And it was a program where you came in, yes, it was in-house, but it was like, hey, if you want to be here, be here. You know, you can leave if you want to leave, but there's going to be repercussions. And I think Ohio needs to approach that more with adults, per se, as forcing people into treatment, forcing people into jails does not work. 100%, I can openly say that 9 times out of 10, it makes it worse. You find other things, you find other methods, you find other people.
Yeah.
You just get madder about your situation. As soon as you get out, you're ready to use again. There's no tools provided for anybody when it comes to true rehabilitation and recovery at this point in Ohio, other than like substitutions, it feels like.
For me, myself, it took 2 solid years of using cannabis as my medicine before I felt like I had kicked those harder addictions. And I feel like we don't give folks enough time, even in the drug treatment centers that we have.
30-day programs,
You know,
60-day
they
programs.
you know, and unfortunately, it has killed people doing that. You know, they go into these drug-assisted programs. They use all their Medicaid or whatever health insurance they have. Use the maximum of that. Give them basically more opioids.
Exactly.
And they get them hooked on those. And then it creates a cycle that they have to deal with then going back to those clinics over and over and over again, and it keeps them in a cycle. And pharmaceuticals 100% know this.
Oh,
They
yeah.
know that. The companies know this. And that's why they,
So is addiction.
yeah. And when you look at the, the addiction treatment centers, they're all funded by pharmaceutical companies, and that's why.
And that's why
Yeah.
Suboxone's such a big thing, is
Yeah.
because there's a pharmaceutical company that
Yeah.
knows that we
Right.
keep people on this, they're going to be on it. And
Right.
that's the sad truth about it.
Right.
It's interesting that you said it took you 2 years to kick the habit that you were able to notice neurologically to where, and physically, hey, this is, I'm over it, I think. And that kind of takes me back to the science of how cannabinoids affect the CB1 receptor in the brain, which have the potentiality to rewire neurology. It has the ability to rewire the brain in such a way, just in the same way post-traumatic stress is sometimes helped with cannabinoids. It causes neurogenesis, which is the formation of new brain cells. And so when we get stuck in a loop of a traumatic event that occurred, our central nervous system is reminded of that by our thoughts, which come from neurology. And so what happens is the cannabinoids cause you to think about things slightly different. It causes you to kind of look at things from a different perspective, which in essence is rewiring neurology around the old dead pathways,
Yes.
forming new pathways.
Yeah.
And this is what we call neurogenesis, and cannabinoids have the ability to do that. In addition to the ability to calm down the central nervous system physically, it will shift you from a fight or flight stage into a parasympathetic stage, to eat, sleep, digest, relax phase, which will cause us to relax. The chemistry of our body calms down. No more endorphins, no more adrenaline, taxing the adrenals, taxing all of that. And the cannabinoids just kind of cause us to calm down and reassess, reevaluate, and look at things slightly differently. And so for you, it took 2 years. And I love the honesty of that, because a lot of people would just say, oh, cannabis cured me overnight. A lot of people like to say that.
Right.
It's very, very misleading.
Yeah.
Because even though it is an exit drug, it's not a walk through the door and it's over
Yeah.
tonight.
It's not a miracle.
No.
Get in that addiction.
It's not a magic wand. Yeah.
You have to retrain the central nervous
Yeah.
system. You have to retrain the brain to be able to respond to trauma differently, subconsciously, because we don't decide to get angry. It's a subconscious thing that comes up due to past traumas, due to unforgiveness, etc. But that's what causes us to do that. And the cannabinoids cause us to look at it differently. Well, wait a minute. Should I really be this mad at that person? Maybe they didn't.
It was how, like, addiction, you always have that excuse of it only harms you, but there's that outside effect, like the stranger on the street that you come unglued on because they walked in front of you or something.
Yeah.
Coming
Trigger.
down from those hard drugs. And like with that, rewiring that new pathways, creating that new thought pattern is another reason why cannabis is so important for us to look into this research, is because, there's other substances and there's other treatments for the actual, the chemical side of the addiction, but they seem to overlook the mental side of addiction a lot, other than let's find out why you're using, not let's treat the things you're dealing with now that you're quit.
Mhm.
It seems to be let's get rid of the problem.
The symptom. It's like modern medicine.
Yeah.
Let's treat the symptom, not the root
Yes.
cause.
Exactly.
Turns out it applies like a parallel metaphor that applies to all this stuff.
Yeah.
Including the endocannabinoid system, including everything. It's just replacing bad habits with good habits.
Exactly.
Instead of taking quote unquote drugs, we take quote unquote cannabis dietary supplements known as CBD and other compounds that will trigger our endocannabinoid system into homeostasis, which is balance. And when we're balanced, we don't really need to seek exterior validation, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think cannabis, for a lot of people, just supplies people with the sense of I'm okay, the sense of everything's okay, and that's a big thing for a lot. No other medicine can do that, really, I don't think.
I always say it changed my relationship with pain.
Yeah.
And that was huge. I did a lot of yoga before and after. And in those yoga sessions that I started to implement cannabis as part of that session.
Why don't we
Uh,
have cannabis yoga?
Well, we need that, right? There were a few in Vegas that I knew about, but yeah, it really changed my relationship with my body and pain, and it really allowed me to, for the first time, understand what I was supposed to be learning 5 years previous in my classes, where I was like doing all the poses right, and I was like trying to like look like yoga
Why was it
girl.
not working
And
right?
yeah, but after I came back to it, after being off of opioids and just using cannabis, I really felt a connection to my body that was unlike anything else. And I always say too, alcohol, the other bad one, it is numbing all of those good things that you're putting into with cannabis. And when you get that out of your system for a year, 2 years, you really start to notice the way that cannabis is supposed to work with you. And I notice now when I move and I do my, intentional yoga movements, which are mostly at home now, which is as much as you want to see like yoga studios
A
everywhere,
little bit
they're
more
great,
free
but
doing it.
yeah, you do, it's, you gotta do it. This is your own practice, and then you have to do what feels right and good to you. And that's one of the things that cannabis taught me, that, just changed my relationship with having pain. And now the first thing I do when I have pain is not to think of that pill or going to that, to that medicine chest. It's to, if I need to get a dab, if it's an intense pain, or if I need to get an edible because it's going to be a chronic pain day. It changes. It has changed my my regimen of anything that is painful. I know that I have yoga to turn to, and that I can move my body in certain ways in order to release a lot of the pain that I'm having. And if I'm still having pain, then I can do a dab.
See, I feel that I have an appreciation for cannabis aside from the addiction stuff, because it gave me kind of an outlet what to do with my time and what to do with my life. Honestly.
Yeah.
Like aside from how it has benefited me, like
Yeah.
stability wise, it benefited me greatly because I've always been a nerd. I've always been interested in drug chemistry since day one. Even when I was a heavy user, I was still interested in what I was using, like chemically. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then cannabis came along and it became a science. It became where we needed voices in the world. We needed people who have a passion. And it was like, hey, there's something I could finally do with the rest of my life. I can set myself up with this chemical that, not to call it a chemical, but THC and all those, it's a chemical you always stigmatized for years because of growing up. You were the weird stoner kid, or you were the guy that was just always picked last because you smoked weed. And now it's like us who are in that category can now flourish. We have our outlet, we have our revenue and our avenue to where we can get in here and we can do what we need to do to get shit done for once. And there's a lot of guys like me who are very antisocial in a sense, but the cannabis industry has given us a new light, a new life on things.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah, it's really
A voice to the good.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's kind of like a, hey, you're finally doing something, you're actually listening instead of just quieting you because you spoke a plant.
People who have these experiences and go through the healing process tend to be like, even if they were once introverted people, which some of us were, you kind of shout it from every rooftop when you heal this way, because you're like, why isn't everybody doing this?
Right, why isn't everybody
Why did it take me so long to find this? Why did it, I didn't really discover the benefits of cannabis until my 40s. And I think what fun I might have had in my 20s and 30s had I discovered cannabis sooner and, been able to, just be different in life. And I think that the younger generation hopefully is seeing that more and more with the accessibility of cannabis in dispensaries all over. But the real question is, and we raised this last month, Holly, is now that we recognize all this, when will cannabis companies step up to support these kinds of treatment centers where you can go in and supported by XX Cannabis Company,
Yep.
And have a treatment center where they can use cannabis as
Feed
part
them
of
some more
their,
RSO.
yeah,
Instead of
Get them
feeding all those
RSO,
other things,
yeah.
feed them some more RSO.
Yeah.
Get rid of all of the things with one
Yeah.
thing.
yeah,
Instead of the methadone or the full root detox, because a lot of
Yeah.
these facilities still do root
Yeah.
detox. They'll send you to a hospital for 2 days and just let you dry out
Yeah.
and suffer, and that's horrible.
One survey I'd like to see is how many current addicts who have failed traditional rehab. I wonder how many of those people would try this assisted recovery. And if we were to bring that data to the right people, if they might be willing to put some money behind it.
I mean, I think if we could make it to look as, I hate to say like my aspect on things, like if we could tell the city that they can make money off of it,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure anybody would be down.
Right.
You know
of
what I
course,
mean?
sure.
We're in a world nowadays where if you come up with an idea for something that's extravagant and might change the world,
Yeah.
people are going to want to make money off of it.
Yeah.
So it's a really good idea to sit back and look at, in all
Right.
honesty.
Yeah, and I don't know that there are any cannabis assisted actual programs in Ohio right now, but I know they exist elsewhere.
Yeah.
And you can always reach, I believe it's Safe Access, which is one of and there are a couple of different places where you can reach like a cannabis nurse, where you can also use any one of the medical cannabis doctors registered in Ohio, or if you're in another state which has a medical program, utilize those doctors
They're not
and
just there to give you a card.
they can help you down this path.
Yeah, I think I mean, we have wheatgrass clinics in California.
Yeah.
Right. You can, if you have cancer, you can go to California and get wheatgrass enemas coming in you, going out
Yeah.
all day long for 2 weeks.
Is that detox? I think.
It'll detox and everything and provide your body with chlorophyll, which is liquid sunlight from the sun and all of that. And it will potentially cure cancer. I mean, they've got it like that. So if they've got wheatgrass clinics, why can't we have cannabis clinics?
Wheatgrass.
Wheatgrass.
Wheatgrass. Yeah, absolutely. No, we do need these places, and they do need to replace traditional drug treatment centers because by and large they don't work. Pharmaceutical, they're tainted with so much pharmaceutical money, and so many of them rely on treatments that we know aren't effective.
Exactly.
And then they release people too soon and put them out in a world where the people who put them in there don't even understand why they're not better after 30 days. Because I spent all this money on this treatment center, we put you in there, and now why aren't you better?
Well, it's because with the outpatient comes responsibility of personal responsibility. And
Sure.
if you're a freshly cleaned addict trying to
Yeah.
make it and more worried about your own sobriety,
Yeah.
personal responsibility is still going to be a struggle, man.
Yeah,
And they
especially
want
at 30 days.
Yeah. They want you to go to meetings and go
Yeah.
to this, and that's
Yeah.
not going to happen a lot of
Yeah.
times, which is what we were discussing earlier. Kind of brings up the fact of what DeWine's trying to do right now, and the whole limiting access to people who aren't going to dispensaries constantly.
Yeah.
Places like your store, like the Columbus Botanical Depot. That provides access to a lot of people for a lot of other forms of medication that could be very beneficial and is very beneficial. But we're in a state now where that could be all stripped from us in a matter of no time.
And what's interesting is the dispensaries don't sell CBG, CBC,
We don't.
CBN, all the other minor cannabinoids. It may be in some live resin extracts, but not in
sell
the
some residue based in our industry, and it's like 20 to 1s, but that's it. You're still getting that THC even if you want it or not.
We need the entourage of the full plant, not just the THC.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, because THC actually, and if you're gonna do like the Rick Simpson protocol with the RSO, that kind of a thing with high THC, it takes somebody 30 days to even build up a tolerance to that recommended dose anyway. So a 30-day program will never work, first of all. But the way to really do it medicinally is to start people out on a CBD full spectrum or isolate if it calls for it. If they need to separate mentally from the idea of a drug, we wouldn't want THC for the mental decapacitation of that. But so we would do a broad spectrum CBD product for 30 days at very high doses to reset their endocannabinoid system, reset their neurotransmitters, and give them a clean slate. Then they're happy, shiny people again. And then if they still need something, then we can introduce some THC products to them, because there is a separation. We all know THC heals the body, but so does the other 199 cannabinoids.
Exactly.
So we don't always need THC as now somebody on opioids or something, or somebody who's coming off of a hardcore physical systematic drug does need THC, because that will help with those physical symptoms. But somebody coming in for alcohol or maybe something else that isn't a hardcore addictive drug, benzos, stuff like that, they can get away with a full spectrum CBD regimen for 30 days, pump them full of it like wheatgrass, and then see how they are. Test their blood, test their anandamide levels, test their 2-erectile, see where they're at with their endocannabinoid tone, and then adjust your medicine prescription from that. Yeah. Well, and here's why too, is because then all the bigwigs will allow CBD. They'll say, oh, we could do this clinic thing if we're just doing broad spectrum or isolate CBD. Sure, we will, can, because it's legal federally. Then, just like the CBD industry, as soon as the crowd understands CBD is not the devil's lettuce, they might look at THC and say, maybe that isn't either. Let's try it. And now the people on their own, CBD is an usher into cannabis medicine. CBD is a exit drug from drugs into the cannabis field.
Absolutely.
And once you discover CBD, which nobody can be mad at a little girl coming out of a seizure with CBD, who could be mad at that?
Right, exactly.
So if that's okay, then maybe it's also okay for us to take it for the other millions of benefits it does to physiology. And that will just kind of make people, it's all about shifting the paradigm of the mind. Perception is everything.
Thought patterns.
That's right. And so CBD will change your thought patterns, not only physiologically, but also it'll change the way you think about things too, because of the new pathways of thinking. And then all of a sudden you'll start realizing, wait a minute, maybe the wine isn't fully accurate with his description of these products. Maybe the FDA has never been fully accurate with the description. Maybe all the lies about all this, maybe there's something going on here. And then it causes you to be what they would call a conspiracy theorist.
Yep.
And then it causes you to see what's really going on behind the scenes, because cannabis opens your eyes, maybe the third one, to what's really going on in the world and within you. And once you discover that, that's a completely better journey path to go down than the drug path. If you realize that actually there's glory to this path and discovery, not only in yourself, but others and the things around you, instead of the path straight to darkness and hell, which is the drugs. And it's no one's fault that they're on. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not my fault that we all did these things. It's because of the predictive programming that we all live in. And the way they program us to think that this is the devil's lettuce, they programmed us to think that benzos are the way to go.
Right, any prescriptions.
Yeah.
It's really
Right.
bad because you're not
Yes.
forgetting.
Yeah.
And that's a really bad thing. And it's not
Yeah.
just our state, it's the United States in general is
Yeah.
behind this whole. It's getting better now, but it was like
Yes.
prescription craze
Yeah.
in the 90s.
They
early
trusted,
2000s.
the government
Yeah, there was
trusted
way
the
too much.
pharmaceutical industry far too widely.
And then the overprescribing to children too and personally, like I said, was one of the reasons I blame my addictions on. Is the prescription pills for kids.
Yeah,
There
absolutely.
needs to be a step back taken and overanalyze them.
Yeah.
Like we discussed, you really want to be giving your child this amphetamine or this opiate or something in lieu of just giving them a plant.
CBD, yeah.
And we could easily drop the addiction numbers in America if we could just try
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with
Yeah.
everything. Is
Yeah.
nobody wants to take that first step in
Right.
our state.
We talked a lot about kids specifically taking things like Ritalin, Vyvanse,
Yeah.
those types of medicines that well-intentioned parents give their kids to, thinking it'll help them excel in school, helping them, pay attention, help them maybe be a little bit more organized. And that may all happen, but it may lead to a huge addiction later in life. So that is something that parents really need to look at more specifically. Like I said, our government has caused us to trust pharmaceutical medicine, Western medicine, so much so that they rely on testimony from doctors to guide our policy. And they don't rely as heavily on alternative medicine specialists to guide policy, but they should. Because the evidence is clear that these alternative medicines, including cannabis, including psychedelics, including other natural therapies, they work in lieu of pharmaceuticals, and that pharmaceuticals have been given just way too much overreach by our government in terms of guiding our policy. And I think that the more that we see at the policy level, states embracing cannabis, both medically and for all adults, the more you'll see those shifts in policy toward trusting what they see in front of their dang eyes, right? Legislators can't, they can't vote against what they see. And the more that advocates like that we see in Ohio, like we've all been to at the State House, those people are going to be necessary to guide this policy and to cause that shift away from doctors and the Western medicine pharmaceuticals being, across the board to, hey, let's look at some different perspectives of different types of medicine before we shape this policy.
And that results all back to why we need federal legalization so bad, because without federally legalizing anything, we can't have any federally funded studies. We all know that's what gets eyeballed more than anything is federally funded studies.
Right, absolutely.
And like I've said for years, cannabis is walking so psychedelics could run for treatment at this point. Many of us know they go hand in hand, and they both are beneficial. Your psychedelics get to your brain just right along with cannabis. But the problem is the people that have these studies and have these reports. But the problem is the people that have these studies and have these reports and this knowledge, they're not credited in the eyes of anybody because they're not a federally funded thing. I think Canada has been doing more research than anybody I've ever seen when it comes to psychedelics. They proved like 8 to 9 years ago that one dose of psilocybin can show serotonin and dopamine improvements in your brain for up to 6 weeks at a time.
Absolutely.
So versus waking up taking a prescription Xanax to get that boost or an SSRI, you're going in with a therapist, you're having one session, and then you're not needing to return for 6 weeks. But that also goes back to the conspiracy level of things of where you're curing something. You're not needing that pharmaceutical every day, so is that why they
Psychedelics were definitely intentionally suppressed. Fun fact, the co-founder of AA, of Alcoholics Anonymous, he used LSD. That is one interesting point. But yeah, really getting back to the policy element, I think specifically in Ohio, what really could change the way that people at cannabis medicine, both at the dispensary level and at places like Joe's Place, is by giving shops that have shown them that the ability to handle this, to give them those licenses that were promised as level 3 licenses, and allow you to have all of those other cannabis medicine, but then allow you also to sell a little bit of THC. I think that would be a reasonable result of all this. I don't know that that's what's going to happen, but it would be nice.
Situation is a lot of things that he kept expressing, and I think the point that he tried to drive home was the fact that there was no written legalization on age limitations. And I'm like, well, then why not just pause for temporarily, write your legislation for your age restrictions, and reintroduce your policy? Like, why throw it completely out? Like, of course, dispensary, we can't have child attractive packaging. We can't have runts or banana ropes or. I get that. I understand if they want to implement a situation where the shops like Joe's, your packaging change it. I mean, I get that. You know what I mean? I know that a lot of places do already respect that. But there are some of those nations we see like bags of Blues or
places like that.
at the store. I can see changing
Sure,
Just
sure.
get it up to par like us.
The packaging you had was from California.
Yeah.
It wasn't even
It wasn't even Ohio.
No, and that's what got me about that. We were laughing our ass off about that. It's like, dude, have your information correct.
Yeah.
Well, no store's ever going to risk their, I guess, license or whatever else you want to call it to sell products to a minor.
Right.
That would just never happen.
No,
It's
man,
the same as
if it
alcohol,
was,
tobacco.
it was what people were. Then that was some guy who didn't really think of the repercussions, and it was probably about 3 times somewhere. You know what I mean?
Well, right. I'm sure it has happened, but it also has happened that kids have obtained alcohol and tobacco and the vape mix stuff. And literally anything else that requires an identification is a challenge to a child. Oh, I can't do it. I'm going to do it.
Exactly.
So, if TikTok said suddenly it's a trend to smack your pinky toe with a hammer, Home Depot would be out of hammers tomorrow.
Right.
Does that mean that we outlaw hammers now?
Yeah.
So it's just a circaic logic of nonsense and non-reason. To fix the problem, again, you don't go after the symptom. You go after the root. The symptom is a kid getting a Skittles thing that eats it and no cannabinoid system, but they also have an unpleasant time.
For a little bit.
In the end, it's medicine, though, and I'm not condoning it ever at all. But isn't it interesting that if a kid accidentally takes anything that isn't cannabis, it's going to have a negative effect? But actually, if they accidentally take cannabis, physiologically, it has a positive effect.
Yeah.
Now, what we and they call high, FDA considers a side effect. Intoxication is a side effect, quote unquote. And so, therefore, children should not have to go through intoxication bouts to get their medicine. That's where CBD comes in. But if a child does need it because CBD hasn't worked enough, well, aren't there children taking THC for seizures? So it's not about this, that. It's about proper dose, proper recommendation, proper acclimation, and all of those things, just like any medicine. Any medicine. A doctor says, we're going to start you out with 2 milligrams of this. Come see me in 4 weeks. We'll see how this has worked. We'll up the dose or down it if necessary. Cannabis should be treated the exact same way. We don't give somebody 10 milligrams. We give somebody 2.5, which is the psychoactive threshold. 80% of patients won't feel it. 20% might. If they have a negative effect from it, we reduce those. Because we don't need, turns out the body doesn't need a psychoactive amount of THC to key to lock the receptor, such as THC does. THC is the only cannabinoid out of 200 and some that key to locks, that fits perfectly in the receptor like a literal key to a literal lock. None of the other cannabinoids do that. They either antagonize or agonize the receptor or interface with it in an indirect. But THC does have a place in every application, but we always start with the low and slow and graduate up, because all medicine should be titrated. Never started at the top, never started in some random hypothesis somebody comes up with.
That's why my first question is, what generally is, do you have experience using THC in the past? Like, did you use in the 60s, or have you been using the last 3 months? Because you don't want to prescribe something like you were mentioning, like RSO or live resin or live rosin, and have somebody go home and just have a
bad
full
time
blown
with
panic
that.
attack. So my general assumption is, like, I try to get them into the cannabinoids more. We have a chart that Barry actually created, the one with the terpenes. Those are hanging all over Columbia Care now. They're behind every register. So a patient can actually walk up and look at their ailment and diagnose themselves with cannabinoids and terpenes in lieu of THC, which is groundbreaking.
If any other dispensaries are watching and need that chart, would like it in the dispensary, feel free to contact me at Gabrielle@MedicateOH.com, and I'll make sure you get one.
It's very nice. It basically provides like a pocket-sized bud tender that your customers can walk up to. Like I said, there's one side that has your ailment and another that lists all the popular cannabinoids and terpenes, and you can just diagnose yourself.
Yeah. Or, alternately, if you are looking for some of these minor cannabinoids, you can come into a shop like Columbus Botanical Depot and get everything that you need there without the whole dispensary. Hustle and bustle of it.
You don't have to wait a half hour.
Yeah.
And that's another reason they're coming after shops like mine, is because there's no excise tax. Because there's no hoops to jump through. There's no what we can say, what we can't say. There's no waiting next to an armed guard before you can go in and wait in another line.
Which can cause
Yeah.
anxiety for
Full of anxiety. People do not like. That's why they come here. And also, a lot of people don't want their name and information in the database.
I've had customers walk out. After asking for IDs.
We don't require that. You know, and also I hate to say it, but the quality.
Yeah.
I'm probably not the first to say that whatever's going on here isn't the best. I personally do not shop at dispensaries. I don't like. It's not that I don't like it. I just don't want it. I don't know why. I would rather get the California, the Oregon stuff that I import here. That's grown from generational farmers that have been doing it for generations. It's grown in living soil. The air quality, the soil, the water quality is better on the West Coast. Well, that's maybe debatable now, but the point is that cannabis thrives where cannabis thrives. It'll express itself to the most of its potential depending upon the variants and inputs it's given. So local stuff grown here in a laboratory, so to speak, in Ohio by guys that have been doing it for a couple years on the books. The plant's only going to express itself to the fullness of the potential that it's given. So I'd rather sidestep it because I know for a fact what's better. And so I just, until Ohio gets caught up with it and is producing some extremely extraordinary stuff that doesn't have mold.
And that's a really sad thing because you're not the only ones like that too. I speak to a lot of people who are even prominent in the industry in Ohio who will not smoke Ohio's weed. And I'm like, man, this is strange to me. But
Yeah.
I see the difference because, like you said, you've got guys that have been doing it since I was like trying days with original genetics, and it's not all this crossbred, this and that,
Right.
which we discuss a lot. Is our OG, like our land strains and stuff, are eventually going to be gone. Sativa and indica, they talked about what I heard at least 6-7 years ago, just phasing out for the industry because supposedly it created too much confusion originally. And I'm like, well, I can understand that because it's typically from growing anyway. And the more we crossbreed, the more we change genetics, we're losing that anyway. Yeah. Because you've got sativas with terpenes that are prominent and indicas and vice versa all the time anyway. So
even Dr. Ethan Russo, him, he has quite a attitude towards the sativa indica business that goes on in the world. There is no sativa or indica. It's all hybrid. Has been for a long time. It can lean one way or the other, but the indica sativa business is only identifying terpene content. That's all it really is. THC has nothing to do with up or down. It's different. Cannabinoids affect the cannabinoid receptors. Terpenes are the Uber drivers that drive the cannabinoids to the right receptor in the right fashion so that the efficacy can be achieved either up or down or in the middle. In the same way that when you smell lemon, scratch a lemon rind, sniff that, it wakes up your olfactory system, which is your smell system, which is tied to mood and memory. Which is why when you smell stuff, you remember stuff like, oh, that reminds me of that. Because the smells through your olfactory system will trigger parts in the brain that remind you of certain things. And cause you to feel either up or down. That's why when you smell lemon, it wakes you up. When you smell lavender, it quiets you down. Well, lemon would be a sativa. Indica would be a lavender, wouldn't it? So indica in the couch, sativa clean the whole house. Hybrid right in the middle. So if you want to be uplifted, you want to look for strains that have high limonene, the lemon terpene. If you want to be couch locked and you want pain relief, you look for content of high myrcene. Myrcene comes from mango also. It's actually proven that if you eat a mango, that it makes you higher because mango contains the highest amount of myrcene out of all fruit. And myrcene is also not only a sedative and a relaxant, but it also opens up the blood relaxes the blood-brain barrier so that more lipid-like cannabinoids can slip through and get you higher. In the same way that if you have brain cancer, they're going to give you high levels of myrcene with your cannabis because the myrcene relaxes the blood-brain so more THC can get through. So the terpenes do play a tremendous part in this indica sativa business, but really what it is just words and nomenclature to try to identify things so that people can kind of understand what we're talking about. This plant is so complex that without these words to try to identify things, we would be completely lost. So I don't think we should get rid of the sativa indica nomenclature, but I think that we should have the terpene charts on the wall, just like you said the dispensaries need, so that their bud tenders can say, oh, you want to be up? Well, here's why, sir. Look at the limonene. See how that says elevated mood? We want to look for limonene in the package. So we flip it around, we look at the lab. Oh, first thing on there is limonene. Well, why does this say hybrid on the front? Because it doesn't matter and people don't know what they're talking about. We need to look at the lab test result. That's what discloses what the chemical components are. And cannabis is not a strain. Strains are viruses. Cannabis is chemovores. Chemovores identify the chemical compounds of the plant. We need to start referring to not strains, but chemovores. Strains are bacteria. Strains are viruses. Strains is COVID. That is not. So as you can see, there's so many different words, nomenclatures to try to. How many words is there for cannabis? 7,000? Hundreds? So all it is an attempt to try to tell the layman person, hey, this is medicine because here's some fancy words to describe what it does. Now, are they 100% accurately descriptive? No, but neither is nothing else. So until the whole world gets on board with this and knows it like we know it, we have to talk about it at Barney level understanding. And that's what our jobs is. We're the forefronters. So we need to Barney level explain this to our customers and to the world and to the podcast and everything else so that people go, oh, it clicks now. Right. It's not hippy-dippy pseudoscience. It's CB1 receptor and CB2 receptor. Yeah, science stuff. Now all of a sudden it's true, right? So let's let that apply to cannabis as well, not just other things. And let's accept this. Because when the people get on board, the doctors will have to.
Yeah. See, my issue is I see as a budgeter a lot of people, the first thing, even new customers that come in, all they want is the high THC.
Yeah.
The first thing out of their mouth is give me the highest THC.
It's an easy thing to do as a former addict too, because you want the most of everything,
but
right?
Then you go to some, I don't want to classify it, but some certain generations will come in and then it's what we've been smoking weed since before you were born. And you have to explain to them that, like, yeah, you had word of mouth back then also. You didn't have all of this information to back up what we're talking about. Like you said, the science terms, the technical things of how it works and how it affects the body. And people don't want to listen. Is one of the main things about implementing something like that is we can implement it all we want, but are people actually going to listen to it?
For myself, I needed, and this is why it's so important to have a variety of businesses that sell and at different levels and things. Because for me, I didn't want to give up what I was doing because I was addicted. I was, I was in it. I was way down in the addiction. And I was told this might be a solution, but I didn't believe it. But I needed to go into a shop and there was someone like me who had a similar issue, who spoke to me like in a way that I understood it. Maybe didn't give me all of the all the science or anything, but it told me, I had a similar issue. These are the kind of products I used. Try these, at this level and come back and let me know what you think. And I think that is the most authentic way for somebody who is addicted to other substances to approach cannabis as medicine, is say, who's close to me? Is it my, this corner CBD shop? Is it my neighborhood dispensary? Does my nephew work at so-and-so? down the street. That new one just opened up close to me, and now I can drive, or I can even maybe walk, because maybe I don't have transportation. Whatever is accessible to you when it comes to cannabis, maybe it's a farmer's market, maybe, you know, yeah, exactly, exactly. Whatever's comfortable and in your community and is the way that you want to approach buying cannabis. But certainly, it's important to involve your medical care team, whatever that is. If you're like someone like myself who has really rejected Western medicine almost entirely, it's important to then have an alternative medicine care team that is helping guide you through this process. I don't recommend folks ever go to the types of treatment centers that we have traditionally seen here in Ohio and throughout the U.S., particularly in Florida. It has been a horrible state for that. They are absolutely predatory by the pharmaceutical industry, but there are solutions. There are, like I said, ways that you can go about approaching this medicine as a replacement for an addiction to opioids, to benzos, to alcohol, to whatever else you're finding yourself falling deeply into. And you can utilize cannabis in a healthy way. So we encourage you, if you're watching this, whenever that is in the future, or right now, or whenever, to approach it, go where it's close to you, and to if you have any questions, also we can MedicateOH.com. We can get resources to you. Feel free to reach out to me here or Lee. We also want to mention Columbus Botanical Depot and High Haven Experience, which is a new program that Lee is going to be involved with. So follow us all, MedicateOH, High Haven, Columbus Botanical Depot. Follow us all on the socials, particularly Facebook, and reach out. If you are having any sort of problem with addiction to other substances, we can get those resources to you for you to go to that next level of seeking alternative medicine. Also, I want to mention before we log off here that we do have MedicateOH is going to be presenting Bloom Cannabis as our sponsor, our second annual Women's Wellness and Cannabis Expo, and that is going to be at the Marriott North in Cincinnati, which is Westchester area, on November 1st from noon to 5. So we hope that folks join us at that. There will be lots and lots of resources for support there, and we may even do a similar presentation there, especially if you're a woman who maybe has one of the most common addictions, going out for wine night, and that wine night turn it into like an all-night thing, and wine weekend, whatever. It really is a great time, especially as the holidays approach, to explore cannabis as a potential alternative treatment than the things that you've been using before, whether that's been alcohol, whether it's been prescription drugs, whether it's been street drugs, whatever you've been addicted to. Cannabis might be a solution for that. And on the medical side, they say that it can be therapeutic in up to 160, I think, diseases and conditions. So it's always an important time of year to get those addictions under control, especially before you meet with your family, who can sometimes also be difficult and maybe throw you back into those traumas of your youth. Yeah. Go ahead.
I just want to add two things. It's really important for people who have gone through this, like we're doing today, to speak out to others. Like we talked about the comfortability and knowing what you're dealing with and talking to someone you're comfortable with. Us speaking outside our personal journeys is just one thing, but everybody else in the industry, if you've been through it, feel free to get loud. Like, this is our chance to actually push something and help others. I really feel like we do an important thing when we come out and we talk about those. It really sheds light, shows others that it's really easy to get into this recovery on this side of things, and like you can come out of it and be a better person in the end. I also want to plug my event too at the end of the month for High Haven Experiences. We are doing Monsters in the Mist, which will be a full day, if not night, Halloween event. You can pay for your day pass, you can pay for your night stay. Any information for High Haven Experiences and our events is available on Facebook. Just want to plug that real quick.
Awesome.
I think other than thanking you guys.
Nice. I'd like to all that may be struggling or going through something. I have lots and lots of samples at Columbus Botanical Depot, piles of samples that I would love to just give away for free. So if anybody wants to try any of this stuff, money's an issue, of course. Give us a call, go online, send us an email, get a hold of us, and we'll send stuff to you guys just to try out. It's our way to try to give back, and so that's the mission here. It always has been, it always will be. And, it's open to everybody. Just hit us up and we'd be glad to give you some stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to reach out to MedicateOH@gmail.com. And we'll see you for the next one. Thanks so much.
Oh, I gotta pee so bad.
It might have captured you saying that.
Oh no.